Good, so for that week, yeah.
He didn't want to do it anyway,
I gotta take a picture of this.
Why did the rocket silent?
I think there's only a couple. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Before we start, I want to make an announcement that there's restrooms back here in the back for anyone who needs to use the restroom. So you'll be aware of that. Hopefully we won't have a line. Okay. At this time, we'll convene the Board of Elections, and we're going to skip the minutes of the meeting from yesterday. They're not done yet, so we'll approve those minutes at our next meeting, future meeting. And so at this time, we'll do the presentation of information pertaining to community concerns about election and voter registration integrity. So at this time, Mr. Stroman. And after Mr. Stroman is finished and Mrs. DeSalvo, Mr. Lehman is going to speak, and then we'll allow the public to speak at that time. I want to make sure we have enough time. We scheduled an hour and a half because I wanted to make sure everyone had an opportunity who wanted to speak to be able to come up and speak. Okay? Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for convening the election board to hear us today. Just want to summarize before we turn it over to Karen DeSalvo, who's done an unbelievable amount of work on behalf of your constituents for this presentation today. This is the role of representation of the people and by the people. We are the people, and we very much appreciate our elected officials hearing us and taking this time to open a constructive dialogue. We're not here today to point out wrongdoing, to point fingers, to be adversarial in any way, shape, or form. We're here because there's been an outcry in the community of concerns regarding the integrity of our elections. In fairness to the board, they had asked us to present for us to present to them ahead of time the information that we were going to give today. And I want to say that this has been a very fluid process, and we were working on this right up until last night. We continue to have more people come forward with concerns and anomalies. So the format again today is for us to present to you our findings. We're not looking for answers today. We just want to give you a little voice and sampling of what we're hearing from the community. Just as government is supposed to work, township supervisors represent their communities to the county and to the state and to the federal government. You as county commissioners are our voice. And we believe that you have the authority to help us look into this. And, you know, I love Lycoming County. Lycoming County has been a pace setter and a leader throughout the Commonwealth in new programs and a lot of modeling that have been used by other counties. And we would like to make this an opportunity to do the same with election integrity. All elections and all politics are local. And we're coming to you because you're our local voice, and we would like, if there are some problems uncovered or if there are better ways to do things, we would like you as our elected officials and representatives to speak up to the Department of State or to our elected officials in state government. And it's very important that we separate elected officials from department heads and so on and so forth. You're our voice, and we want you to hear us today. So we thank you very much. We ask that you could preserve our time for the presentation, and then we'll let you know when we're finished with our presentation so that the format can be opened up to a broader scale. But we'd like the opportunity to present everything we have. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. This is like the policy and procedure handbook for the county. Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Karen DeSalvo. I'm a local attorney. I've been licensed to practice law since 1997 here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And I appreciate so much everyone coming out, everyone who cares about this issue of election integrity. This is a bipartisan issue, so that's what I want to talk about today. Across our nation, citizens have lost faith in the integrity of the election process. There have been lots of polls that have come out over the course of the last year and a half, And you would think since the time of the November 2020 election, the polling numbers would start to decrease in terms of the number of people that don't trust the results of the November 2020 election. But what we've seen is actually the exact opposite of that. And I said it's a bipartisan issue. It absolutely is. The polls that I chose to use for our presentation today came from CNN, so not exactly a right-leaning organization. According to polling conducted, something happened to my screen, in February.
Push it back.
I'm too close. I'm sorry. According to polling conducted on February 11th of 2022, 74% of Republicans do not believe that American elections reflect the will of the people. 59% of independents do not believe that American elections reflect the will of the people. And in fact, 32% of Democrats do not believe that American elections reflect the will of the American people. This is according to CNN polling from February. And if you follow the polling trends, they continue to rise. So why do people not trust the results of the November 2020 election? I want to start with a little clip that many of you, I'm sure, have seen, but it shows what happened, a phenomenon that happened on the night of the election.
Karen is still a little too close.
Okay, sorry. We don't have volume. Thank you. Thanks. Can you rewind it to the beginning? You just have to scroll that green line.
Georgia's most populous county, and now the population has gone.
It's Allegheny, which is Pittsburgh, but also Beaver, Hartford County, Butler, and Westmoreland. They've all stopped counting for the night. They've gone to bed. They begin the process at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Good morning, Heather. They did have a press pause overnight. They will be back in a few short hours, expected to resume counting around 8:30 this morning.
Fulton County is now going to stop counting at 10:30 p.m. and will resume their count at tomorrow morning.
They basically stopped counting tonight. They're going to start counting again in a few hours. It's already tomorrow morning, right?
The election workers stopped counting those mail-in ballots at 10 o'clock. They will be back again tomorrow at 10 a.m.
And Nevada says it stopped counting the votes yesterday, election day, but they don't say why. Why did you stop counting?
But the counting in one of that state's biggest counties has stopped. Mike Armstrong is in Pennsylvania. Mike, we're talking about Allegheny County. That's the area around Pittsburgh. What's happening?
So on the night of the election, the counting stopped. And this was a new phenomenon, something that we hadn't previously seen. And lots of people were left wondering why, what happened. In all of these states across the United States and in lots of places in Pennsylvania, the counting stopped. In the days after the election, I won't have these links played. This is just additional information. Everyone who has been given a folder has this presentation saved on a flash drive. So if you want to go in and watch those later. But the first link that I have there is from Jesse Morgan, an interview with Jesse Morgan. So some of you may recall the truck driver who had not voted for anyone in the election, but he came forward through the help of the Amistad Project and testified in a live press conference that he had transported a load of completed ballots from Bethpage, New York, into Pennsylvania in October, right before the election. His trailer disappeared. And so he came forward to share this strange story, the strange thing that had happened to him. According to him, he estimated by the number of pallets in the back of his truck, in the trailer, he estimated that it could have been as many as 280,000 ballots that were transported from Bethpage, New York, into Pennsylvania, the Lancaster, Harrisburg area, just weeks before the election. So I have a link to that press conference and some information that follows. What happened next was a hearing was held in Gettysburg. So I'm sure many of you saw the Gettysburg hearing that was spearheaded by hopefully our soon-to-be next governor, Doug Mastriano. And Doug Mastriano allowed the people to come forward, much like our commissioners are doing here today. He allowed the people to come forward and tell their stories about what they saw in the November 2020 election. And I'm sure many of you, like myself, we were glued to our television sets. We wanted to see, was the election fair? Why did the counting stop? We wanted to know exactly what happened in Pennsylvania. If you watched those hearings, you would have seen the testimony that included Justin Queter, who is an attorney, who is a canvass observer. He testified that he had been present for 85 hours at the election. He said there were too many irregularities to cover, and his conclusions from his personal observations was that this election was not secure, and it absolutely was not transparent. A veteran of foreign wars, Greg Strenson, who was a forensic computer scientist, he came forward and testified that he saw a warehouse supervisor come in repeatedly with a baggie that contained USB drives. He plugged them into machines. He saw this individual plugging these USB drives into machines over 24 times. He told the deputy sheriff, he told the clerk of elections. Nobody seemed to care. Colonel Phil Waldron, a cybersecurity expert, an operations officer with a specialty in electronic warfare, testified at the time of the hearing. In addition to the expert conclusions that he made during that hearing, he also talked about an incident that occurred in Philadelphia on September 30th, 2020, where an election storage facility was robbed. 30 USB drives and a laptop were stolen. According to Colonel Phil Waldron, cybersecurity expert, he believes that it was likely that these were the encryption devices that were referenced by Greg Strenson. So what about Lycoming County? That's what we're all here for today. So what we want to do today is talk about Lycoming County, because Lycoming County voters do not trust the results of the November 2020 election. This map of Pennsylvania that you see here was put together by military analyst Captain Seth Keschel. So Captain Seth Keschel was an analyst in the military, so what he did was he crunched numbers, he looked at trends, he made evaluations for our military. He took that expertise after the November 2020 election to the arena of elections, and he worked his way across the United States, going county by county, evaluating voting registration trends versus how people showed up to vote in the November 2020 election. After thoroughly evaluating each county, he would then place a county in red, yellow, or green. So if military analyst Captain Seth Keschel puts your county in green, that meant the numbers made sense. The numbers aligned. If you look at voter registration trends, those trends align with what happened in November 2020. So you'll see in Pennsylvania, there are a couple of counties, Fulton County, 2 others, that he placed in green. If Captain Seth Keschel placed your county in yellow, that means the numbers didn't make sense, and you need to take a closer look at what happened in your county. If your county was placed in red, what that meant, according to military analyst Captain Seth Keschel, was that it is likely that rampant fraud occurred in your county, and you absolutely need to take a close look at what happened in your county, because the numbers simply do not make sense. We had Captain Seth Keschel here in Williamsport. We actually had him meet with our commissioners in September of last year. He shared his information with our commissioners. We were able to bring him back to Williamsport just about 10 days ago, and many of you in the audience were there present to hear what Captain Seth Keschel had to say. Because the commissioners were not able to be present that night, I did have a clip where he talked specifically about Lycoming County. This clip is about 3 minutes in length. I have to apologize for the very poor quality. I was seated in the second row, and this is not my forte, so hopefully you can hear it. If you cannot hear it, this is, as I said, on the flash drive that each one of you have. If you have a notebook, you have a flash drive, so if you could please watch it later, I would very, very much appreciate it, but if you could please play it at this time, hopefully we can hear it.
Almost 4,000 votes in a smallish town for what? More than 10% loss. And there's Barack Obama, where you're gaining almost the exact same amount that McCain lost. The middle went to Obama. So now we have a Democrat gaining 2,700, the Republicans are down 3,700. The county was 13.6% in favor of Republican Party registration in 2008, and it yielded a 12,000 vote Republican win. And then, just like the rest of Pennsylvania, Lycoming County starts a heavy move towards the GOP. Slide. But it wasn't because of Mitt Romney. Look, Romney is almost stuck in the Kansas number. But Obama is now down 3,000 votes. The non-college white vote abandoned the Democrat Party in Obama's first term. Registration-wise, 3,000 new Republican registrations, a loss of 3,000 Democrat. Plenty of people sitting out Mitt Romney, and the population is declining. The county in 2012 is 16.7% in favor of the Republican Party, and there is your larger Republican Party by about 3,000 more votes. Trump comes on the scene. Slide. And there's a gain of 5,000 votes. So already in 2016, the county took to Donald Trump. We have counties that took immediately to Trump, and then we have other counties that still went Republican that did not, like Lancaster County. Still went to him by a lot, but it was a smaller margin around them. The Democrats are down again, another 2,000 votes. Why? Population gain is not there in the county, and this is present. The Democrats are down 1,600 registered voters. The Republicans are now pouring it on, 4,000 new Republicans, and your registration advantage is another 6 points towards the GOP. You have a 22.5 point Republican county in 2016, and there is your margin. Almost 23,000 vote margin for Trump, which is up by 11,000 votes in margin just from 8 years prior. So do you see these small counties adding another 11 and 15,000 votes of margin every year, of blotting out the Democrat strongholds in which they flips? If I'm a Trump strategist in the county, I have a gain of 5,000 votes. If we get another 5,000, we'll hit 40,000 votes in Lycoming County. 40,000 is the goal. Slide. Well, there's 41. 41-4. Now the registration numbers. They're gruesome for Democrats. Here's a 7-point move in party registration in the county. We have a huge gain for Trump. So if you're at a blackjack table and the dealer flips up 41,462 votes, and these registration numbers, 5,000 new Republicans and 1,400 fewer Democrats, what do you think that number is? Down, where are you at? I'm in the 12s. 12s. Slide.
Oh. Okay, so I know that's not evidence. He's just predicting based on voter registration trends. He's predicting how voters will vote. And so I recognize that that's not evidence, but definitely that's something that should be looked into. So that's exactly what we did. So volunteers from our community, we had a school teacher, a retired police officer, a retired postal worker, college professor, business owners, legal secretary, a pharmacist, many occupations, all walks of life, started knocking on doors. We wanted to find out if what happened in the November 2020 election in Lycoming County was correct, whether the numbers were accurate, or whether Captain Seth Keschel was right, that there was a real problem here in Lycoming County. What did all of our volunteers have in common? They all have an absolute love for this community. They love Lycoming County, and I want to just at this point would like to thank the volunteers that you're going to hear from in just a minute who knocked on doors in December, January, February, and March. They knocked on doors in snow squalls, in the snow, in rain. Some people got caught in people's driveways. One person got bit by a dog. Why did they do this? And the person who got bit by a dog and had stitches continued to canvass after this happened. Why? Because of our love for Lycoming County and because we want to get to the bottom of what happened here in our community. When we went to people's doors, we asked 3 questions. Did you vote in the 2020 election? How many people in your household were registered to vote in 2020? How many people in your household voted in 2020? And then we matched that against data that was obtained from government agencies, including state voter exports made available by the Pennsylvania Department of State, dated on or about November 3rd, 2020, right to know data received from the Pennsylvania Department of State, and address change data from the United States Postal Service National Change of Address database. What we found, we attempted 346 addresses, and what we found was an anomaly rate of approximately 48%. So what does this mean? How did we arrive at this figure? When we asked people at doors how many people were registered at their address, they would give us a number. So they would say, for example, 2 people are registered from this address. But when we went to the information that was provided by the state, 44% of the time it was different. So according to the state, 4 people were registered, 5 people were registered, 6 people were registered. Oftentimes the people that were registered at those addresses they had never heard of, despite living in their homes for decades. What was more disturbing was the discrepancy rate when it came to how people voted. So people, when we asked the question, did you vote? How many people voted at this address? They would give us a number. So for example, 2. 2 people registered, 2 people voted. That seemed to be what we were told the most, 2 and 2. When you went to the state voting records, however, oftentimes a vote was not registered in an individual's name. So some people's votes apparently did not count. And we found the opposite held true too. Some people said, I did not vote. I did not vote in the November 2020 election, but somehow a vote was mysteriously cast in their names. The method of voting was also different. They would tell us, for example, that they cast their ballot in person, but somehow a mail-in ballot was recorded for their name, or a provisional ballot when they indicated that they did not cast a provisional ballot at the polls. So what we're going to do now is actually share this information that we found. And so all the volunteers, they have their redacted affidavits with them. All of the volunteers that participated in this effort signed affidavits outlining the information that they're sharing with you. They signed these affidavits under penalty of perjury. We have redacted this information that we are going to share with you today because this is a public forum. So we have eliminated the names of the individuals that we have spoken to and the street numbers where people reside. All of this unredacted information has, however, been provided in these folders to the Director of Voter Services and also to the commissioners. So they have the unredacted forms. Some of them, when our volunteers come up and read, some of the information is going to be a little bit confusing, and it's because we redacted information. So it makes more sense when you have it in its entirety. And as Jeff said at the beginning of this is an opportunity for us to share our information. We recognize that you're going to have to investigate this information after the fact, and we have given you all of the information that we have so that you have the ability to investigate going forward. Our volunteers they all have an itinerary for today, and so what I would ask for you to do is if you could please we're going to try to do this as quickly as possible. In your books you have 48 affidavits that have been prepared for today. We're not going to read all 48 for the sake of time. We're going to read approximately 37. And so we're going to try to keep things moving, and we have shortened these affidavits. They're longer in your book. We're trying to get to the point just to give you a feel for what we saw in just the small sampling that we took here in Lycoming County. So if Rich Henry could come up, you're number 1 on the list, and I'm going to sit down and we'll let our volunteers come up and share what they found.
Thank you, Karen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, sir. My name is Richard Henry. I'm retired from the Pennsylvania State Police. I've lived in Lycoming County for 28 years. I own and pay taxes on 2 properties in East Lycoming School District. I'm registered to vote in Lycoming County. On February 22nd, 2022, I participated in a vote canvassing effort in Lycoming County, Pennsylvania. I was accompanied by Cynthia Lunger, who's also a resident of Lycoming County. On February 22nd, 2022, we attempted to locate a house on Ray Street in Hughesville for vote canvassing purposes. The address does not exist. On February 22nd, 2022, I spoke with a Hughesville postal worker who confirmed the address does not exist. The U.S. postal worker further stated that this address never existed. According to state voting information, the individual voted in November 2020 election using this non-existent address.
Good morning. My name is Cheryl Lambert, and I'm a registered voter in Lycoming County. On February 5th, 2022, I participated in a vote canvassing effort in Lycoming County, Pennsylvania. I was accompanied by Lucia Purcell, who is also a Lycoming County resident. On that day, we attempted to visit an address on Route 15 Highway 1 in Williamsport for vote canvassing purposes. According to state voting information, one individual was registered to vote from that address. And according to state voting information, this person who voted registered to vote on October 22nd, 2016, but was a first-time voter in the November 2020 election. We found that the address does not exist, and pictures were taken of the empty lot where this address was supposed to be.
Can I just ask you, you have a couple of affidavits in here, so is it, which one is it referencing? I'm seeing Cheryl Lambert, 318 Ross.
Your affidavits follow the order that we are going in today. We are going to skip, after we get into the 30s, you'll see we start skipping them, but you have in each transparency, in each one of those folders, you have affidavit in the order that they are being presented here today.
Okay, thank you.
And Victor, if you could come up. If we could just kind of keep following that itinerary list to keep people moving up through here. Thank you, Sharon.
Morning. My name is Victor Walsh. I've been a resident of Lycoming County most of my life, except for some time away, serving our country for 4 years in active duty out of high school. Then in the Army Reserves for a total of 23 years of service, during which I did a tour of combat in the combat zone in Iraq. I also served our country as a letter carrier for 33 years. Registered to vote in Lycoming County. On January 8, 2022, I attempted to locate an address in Shady Acres, Jersey Shore, for vote canvassing purposes. I was accompanied by my wife, who is also a resident of this great county. At this location, we found only a small two-car garage with no signs of any residence. This address was not a residential address. A commercial sign was located outside the building. According to state voting information, an individual casted a vote from this location in November 2020 election. I have a picture here to show you of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Welch, and thank you for your service, too.
Hello. My name is Carol Manwaring, and I'm employed by a local law firm in Williamsport. I am registered to vote in Armstrong Township, Lycoming County, Pennsylvania. On February 12, 2022, I participated in a vote canvassing effort in Lycoming County. I was accompanied by Sandy Thomas, a resident of Lycoming County. While canvassing, I spoke to a Lycoming County resident located in a nursing home in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. According to state voting information, this person voted via absentee ballot in the November 2020 election. When asked whether he voted in the November 2020 election, this gentleman indicated he did not vote in the November 2020 election. This individual evidenced these facts through the signing of an affidavit, which is located in your books. While at this same nursing home in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, I spoke to another gentleman. This was also on February 12th of 2022, and I was with Sandy Thomas, a resident of Lycoming County. The gentleman was a Lycoming County resident, and again, according to state voting information, this person also voted via absentee ballot in November 2020 election. When asked whether he voted in the November 2020 election, this individual indicated he does not vote and did not vote in the November 2020 election. The individual located in the bed next to him stated he don't vote.
Hello, thank you for having us. My name is Lucia Purcell. I'm a registered voter here in Lycoming County. I am a former TSS. I currently homeschool my two boys who are 7 and 8, and I cater for Lycoming College. I cried every day during election week because I knew something was terribly, terribly wrong, which is why I participated in this voter canvassing effort with my friend Cheryl Lambert, who is also a registered voter in Lycoming County. So on February 13th, 2022, Cheryl and I visited an address in Williamsport for vote canvassing purposes. According to the state voting information, 6 people were registered to vote at this address. Also, according to state voting information, 5 of these individuals voted in the November 2020 election. While attempting to confirm this information, the resident that we were speaking to informed us that one of the individuals listed who had cast an absentee ballot in the November 2020 election did not reside there and never did. So this is where it gets funky. According to vote records, this person registered to vote on February 12, 1996. However, they were mysteriously absent from the Pennsylvania voter rolls in April of 2020, but was somehow able to cast an absentee ballot in the November 2020 election from this address. Also, according to the resident, another individual that was registered at this address did not reside there in 2020. Thank you.
Karen, I don't think we have Lucia's affidavit.
It's there. It's
Is
all
it?
there.
I have it here.
Which page, where are you, in the front of it?
Everything's been checked and double-checked and triple-checked. It's there.
Coming into it, right near.
Okay, so I also canvassed. My name is Karen DeSalvo. As I indicated earlier, I'm a licensed attorney. I've been licensed in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania since 1997. I'm registered to vote in Lycoming County. On December 28, 2021, I participated in a vote canvassing effort. I was accompanied by Lindsay Almer, also a resident of Lycoming County. On that date, we spoke to an individual on Little Gap Drive in Cogan Station. According to state voting information, 4 individuals were registered to vote at this address on Little Gap Drive in November of 2020. According to state voting information, no one from this address voted in the November 2020 election. According to one of these individuals, the resident who answered the door on Little Gap Drive, 2 of the people listed did not reside there in November of 2020. They had moved out years before. More troubling, however, was that he indicated that he and his wife had in fact voted in the November 2020 election. But for some reason, neither of them has a record of votes being cast in their names in the November 2020 election. On January 3rd, 2022, I canvassed again. This time I was accompanied by Orrin Thomas, also a resident of Lycoming County. On that date, we spoke to an individual on Cottage Avenue in Cogan Station. The individual advised that he registered to vote in approximately 1968. He indicated that he believed that he had voted in every election since registering to vote. He indicated that he voted on November 3rd, 2020. Pursuant to state voting records, the only vote that appears to have been cast from this Cottage Avenue address in the November 2020 election was an absentee ballot cast by this man's son, who is serving in the military in our Air Force. According to state voting information, only 1 vote appears to have been counted from this address, so this man's vote did not count. This individual signed an affidavit evidencing this information that we shared. It is in your books.
Hello. My name's Lindsay Almer. I've been in Loyalsock for 8 or 9 years now. I'm a registered voter in Lycoming County. In December of 2021, Karen DeSalvo and I visited a home in Cogan Station. According to our information, 1 registered voter was at that address and 1 registered voter voted in person. When we knocked on the door, 2 people resided at the home. Both insisted that they had lived there during that time. Both had cast a vote. It appears that the woman's vote did not count. We could not find a record of it.
I'm paying to count.
Good morning, County Commissioners. My name is Cynthia Lunger. I'm registered to vote in Lycoming County. On February 12, 2022, I participated in a vote canvassing effort in Lycoming County, Pennsylvania. I was accompanied by Richard Henry, who was also registered in Lycoming County. On February 12, 2022, we visited a residence in Hughesville, Pennsylvania, 17737, for vote canvassing purposes. According to state voting records, 3 people who registered to vote and 1 voted. According to the 2 individuals that reside at this address, they both did in fact vote in November 2020 election. But the person whose vote is recorded for this address does not live there. What happened to both of those votes cast?
Hi, this is Carol Manbury. On January 12th, 2022, I participated in a voting canvassing effort in Lycoming County. I was accompanied by Brenda Oberheim, a resident of Lycoming County, Pennsylvania. While canvassing, we went to another nursing home, this one in Montoursville, Pennsylvania. According to state voting information, 1 individual voted via a mail-in ballot in the November 2020 election. Upon locating her within the nursing home, I was unable to confirm voting information with her because she was unable to answer some general questions that I posed to her. She was unable to identify the current president and could not remember what she ate for breakfast that day. According to an employee of the nursing home, this lady had dementia in November of 2020. An affidavit was obtained from the nursing home employee, which outlined her cooperation with these efforts, but for confidentiality reasons is not attached here too.
Carol, you
Sorry. No, it's here's what it was. Okay, Carol Manwaring. On January 15 of 2022 and February 5th of 2022, I participated in a vote canvassing effort in Lycoming County. While canvassing, I went to a nursing home in Montoursville. I was accompanied by Brenda Oberheim, a resident of Lycoming County. According to state voting information, a woman at this nursing home voted via absentee ballot in the November 2020 election. The woman, who appeared to be very alert, indicated she did not vote in the November 2020 election. And she further indicated that she did not receive any papers to fill out in order to cast a vote in the November 2020 election. This lady signed an affidavit in evidencing the facts, and the affidavit is also in your books. Okay, on Carol Manwaring, on January 15, 2022 and February 5th, 2022, I participated in a vote canvassing effort in Lycoming County. I again was accompanied by Brenda Oberheim, a resident of Lycoming County. While canvassing, I went to another nursing home in Montoursville. According to the state voter information, there was an elderly woman who was a first-time voter in the November 2020 election. According to the state voter information, she registered to vote for the first time in her life in October of 2020. Also, according to state voter information, she voted via absentee ballot in the November 2020 election. According to the employee of the nursing home, she was admitted to the nursing home on May of 2020. According to an employee of the nursing home, she was labeled not capable upon admission. According to the nursing home employee's recollection, this individual could not talk and was bedridden at the time of her admission to this nursing home. The nursing home employee was very surprised to learn that this individual registered to vote following her admission to the nursing home and subsequently voted in the November 2020 election. Oh my gosh. On February 2nd of 2022, I again participated in a vote canvassing effort in Lycoming County. I was accompanied by Brenda Oberheim, a resident of Lycoming County again. While canvassing, I spoke to 2 individuals in Montoursville. According to voting information, both individuals were identified as residing at this address. Both indicated they voted during the November 2020 election. Both indicated that they were the only voters registered to vote from that address. But according to voter information, there were 3 individuals who were registered to vote from this address in the November 2020 election. According to voting information, only one of the ladies I spoke to voted. It stated that she had cast in-person vote for the November 2020 election. So, according to the state voting information, the other lady's vote apparently did not count because she did not cast a vote in November 2020 election. Additionally, the other individual registered at the address who voted by the absentee ballot did not live there in November of 2020. The lady signed an affidavit, which is in your books. And, and on January 20, 2022, and February 2022, I participated in a vote canvassing effort in Lycoming County. I was accompanied by Brenda Overheim, a resident of Lycoming County. While canvassing, I went to a third nursing home in Lycoming County. According to voter information, a certain gentleman voted via absentee ballot in the November election. When asked whether he voted in the November 2020 election, this gentleman indicated that he did not vote. According to him, no ballots were received relating to the November 2020 election. He evidenced these facts through the signing of an affidavit, and that is in your books. And on February 22nd of 2022, I participated in a vote canvassing effort in Lycoming County. I was accompanied by Debbie Kite, a resident of Lycoming County. While canvassing, I spoke to a Lycoming County resident with an address in Williamsport. According to this affidavit, 2 individuals were registered to vote in the November 2020 election from this address. According to this individual, 2 individuals voted in the November 2020 election. According to the individual, 1 mail-in ballot was received in his name before the election, November election. He took the mail-in ballot to the polls with him. At the Little Sock precinct, they took his ballot, mail-in ballot, and a provisional ballot was cast. The individual indicated that his wife also accompanied him to the polls to vote. According to his wife, an in-person vote was cast by her in the November 2020 election. Pursuant to information provided to us by the state election agencies, only 1 person was registered to vote from that address, and that was her husband. According to voter information, only 1 person voted from that address, and it was her husband. According to voting information, he voted in person. No provisional ballot designation was identified. Moreover, it appears that his wife's vote did not count in the November 2020 election, as she was not even listed as having a vote from that address. Additionally, both of them received letters from Forrest Lehman regarding services as poll workers at the address identified at that address. Affidavits evidencing these facts were signed by both of them, and copies of the letters received from Forrest Lehman are in your books.
We have a volunteer who wasn't able to be here today, so I was going to read this from her for her. So she and her husband, her name is Anne Marie Furman, they participated in a vote canvassing effort on February 12th, visited a home in Jersey Shore. According to state voting information, only 1 person was registered to vote from the address, and 1 person voted. When attempting to confirm this information, they were greeted at the door by a female address at this Jersey Shore address who indicated that 3 people actually voted from the address in November of 2020, which of course did not match the state voting record information.
On January 3rd, 2022, I participated in a vote canvassing effort in Lycoming County, Pennsylvania. I was accompanied by Cynthia Lunger, who is a resident of Lycoming County. On January 3rd, 2022, we visited an address in Hughesville, PA for vote canvassing purposes. According to state voting records, in November of 2020, 2 people were registered to vote from the above referenced address. Also, according to state voting records, only 2 individuals registered to vote from the above referenced address actually cast a vote in the November 2020 election. However, according to the resident that answered the door, 3 people were registered to vote from this address in November 2020, and 3 people actually voted. It appears that 1 vote from this address did not count. Also, this individual indicated she received a mail-in ballot, was received her address with somebody else's name on it. She did not, however, have the ballot.
Name's Tom Adams. I come from the belly of the beast in Montgomery County. I moved up here in 2018. And I love this county. It reminds me of
home when I was a kid. I worked for a bank for 10 years before retirement. And to get a job with a bank, you have to pass a lot of deep background checks, for more than normal background checks. So I don't like lying, I don't like fraud, and I love righteousness. And I think the biggest problem we have in this country is we turned our back on God and took the name of Jesus Christ out of our public square. And that has to be brought back in our schools. I'm a registered voter in Lycoming County. I participated in a voting canvassing effort in Lycoming County, Pennsylvania on March 5th, 2022. I visited a house in Williamsport for vote canvassing purposes. On that date, I spoke to a resident of that home. According to this person that answered the door in November 2020, 3 individuals were registered to vote in the general election, and 3 people voted in the November 2020 general election. Pursuant to state voting information, 4 individuals are registered to vote at that address in November 2020, and 2 people voted. It appears that 1 person's vote did not count in the November 2020 election, and according to the resident that answered the door, the 4th person registered to vote there in November 2020 did not live there in November 2020 and said that didn't even know who this person is. So if you don't think there's fraud, you got to wake up.
I'm Carol Manwaring. On January 15th, 2022, I participated in a vote canvassing effort in Lycoming County, Pennsylvania. I was accompanied by Brenda Oberheim, a resident of Lycoming County. While canvassing, I visited an address in Montoursville, Pennsylvania. According to state voting information, 3 individuals were registered to vote from that address in the November 2020 election. According to the residents, however, 1 of the individuals did not reside at that address in 2020.
I'm Cheryl Lambert. On February 9th, 2022, I participated in a vote canvassing effort in Lycoming County, Pennsylvania. I was accompanied by Doris Bush, who was also a resident of Lycoming County. On that day, we visited a home on Howard Street in South Williamsport for vote canvassing purposes. According to state voting information, 5 people were registered to vote from this address in November of 2020. According to state voting information, 2 of the individuals identified as being registered from that address actually voted in the November 2020 election, and 1 of those 2 cast her vote by mail-in ballot. When attempting to confirm this information, I spoke to this woman who was a first-time voter in the November 2020 election. She stated that she did not vote by mail-in ballot, but cast her vote in person in the November 2020 election.
Carol Manwaring. On April 2nd, 2022, I participated in a vote canvassing effort in Lycoming County, Pennsylvania. I was accompanied by Debbie Kipe, a resident of Lycoming County. While canvassing, I spoke to a Lycoming County resident with an address in Williamsport. According to this individual, a mail-in ballot was received prior to the election. He took his mail-in ballot to the polls where they told him to vote with a provisional ballot. According to the state voting information, which was obtained through state voting records, this individual voted in person. No provisional ballot designation was identified.
Victor Welshans. On January 8th, 2022, my wife and I went to an address on State Street in Jersey Shore for vote canvassing purposes. 2 individuals at that residence told us that they both voted in November 2020 election. According to state voting information, only 1 individual was registered to vote using the above referenced address on November 2020. Only 1 person actually voted. It appears that 1 person's vote from this address at State Street in Jersey Shore did not count in the November 2020 election. On February 5th, 2022, my wife and I also visited an address in Annasport for vote canvassing purposes. According to state voting information, 3 people were registered to vote at that address. All 3 people voted in the November 2020 election. When attempting to confirm this information, we spoke to one of the residents and were told that only 2 people were registered to vote from the address and only 2 people had voted in the November 2020 election. When we asked about the 3rd individual listed in the state voting records, we were told that this 3rd person did not currently live there and did not reside there in the 2020 election. Residents further indicated that he had never even heard of this 3rd person that had casted a vote from their address in November 2020. The resident signed an affidavit which has been provided to you.
Good morning. My name is Linda Ambrose. I'm a pharmacist. I graduated from Temple University School of Pharmacy in 1977. I made Lycoming County my home in 1992. I work as a pharmacist here in Williamsport. I am registered to vote in Lycoming County, PA. On January 13th, 2022, I participated in a vote canvassing effort here in Lycoming County and was accompanied by Mike House, who is also a resident of Lycoming County. On that date, we visited an address in Montoursville for vote canvassing purposes. According to that resident that answered the door that day, 2 people were registered to vote from that address in November 2020, and 2 people voted in that November 2020 election. According to state voting information, however, only one of the 2 individuals was registered to vote, and only 1 voted. It appears that person's vote from that address did not count in the November 2020 election. And then I also have, on November 13th, 2022, we visited another home in Montoursville. According to the individual that answered the door, no one was registered to vote at that address in November 2020, and no one voted from that address. According to state voting information, 1 person was registered to vote from the above references address, and 1 person cast a vote from that address.
My name is Michael House. I'm a registered Lycoming County resident. I have 2 properties. I'm also a local president for AFSCME, and my members are actually concerned about this too. On February 20th, 2022, I participated in voter canvassing in Lycoming County, PA. I accompanied Linda Ambrose, who is a resident of Lycoming County and was just up to speak. On that date, we visited a house in Montoursville. According to voter information, 3 individuals were registered to vote at the address on November of 2020. 2 registered Republicans and 1 registered Democrat. But 2 of the names were exactly the same. The ID numbers were different, but the names were the same. When we talked to the individual whose name was listed twice, she indicated that she had changed her party affiliation years ago. It appears that 2 separate voter identification numbers have been issued for the same person. My next address, on the same day, just down the street, in fact, we visited another home. According to the state voter registration information, 5 individuals were registered to vote at this address in November of 2020. When we spoke to the individual that answered the door, what we discovered was another duplicate. We were advised that 2 of the 5 individuals listed in the state voter records were the same person. His first name was listed in full, and his first name was abbreviated. 2 separate ID numbers were listed. Thank you.
Carol Manwaring. On April 22nd of 2022, I participated in a voting canvassing effort in Lycoming County. While canvassing, I spoke to a Lycoming County resident with an address in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. According to the individual that I spoke to, when he went to the polls to vote in the November 2020 election, he was told that he had requested a mail-in ballot and was accordingly unable to vote. He indicated that he never requested a mail-in ballot. He was finally permitted to submit a provisional ballot. He indicated that he was told that he was not the only person to experience this problem at the polls, and he completed an affidavit according to his experience. If I could, I'd like to back up to when I read number 14. I think I was like the vice president, how she just had words, 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 and doesn't make sense. But what happened is I went to the nursing home with this girl, and at the nursing home it said, we were going to see a Bob. And it said Bob, and we went in the directory in the nursing home said Bob and a wife. And I thought, oh, the wife might have died. So we went and knocked on the door, and the man answered, and the man and the wife were both there. That is where he voted, but we have no register of her vote. But they lived together, and that was where they had mailed from Forest Slayman. So she did vote, but there's no record according to state voting records. And that was number 14.
Cheryl Lambert. On January 23rd, 2022, I canvassed with Lucia Purcell. We are both residents of Lycoming County. On that date, we visited a home on West Southern Avenue in South Williamsport. According to state voting information, one person was registered to vote from the address, and this person cast her vote via absentee ballot in the November 2020 election. When attempting to confirm this information, we spoke to one of the residents at that address. We were advised that 2 people were actually registered to vote from the address in November of 2020, and 2 people actually voted from the address. The state voting records did not include either of these individuals as being registered at this address. And according to state voting information, neither of these votes were recorded for this address. The only person that is listed as having cast a vote via absentee ballot from that address no longer lived there, as she had moved out of the state in August of 2020. And then on January 23rd, I also visited another address in South Williamsport with Lucia. According to state voting information, 4 people were registered to vote from the address. According to the resident that we talked to, only 2 people were registered to vote from the address in November 2020, and one of the individuals who was registered to vote at that address in November of 2020 did not live there in November of 2020.
On February 12th, I participated in a vote canvassing effort. I was accompanied by Orrin Thomas. And we went to an address where actually the lady said to us, you need to talk to my sister, and sent us to another address. So we went to the second address. According to the individual that we spoke to, her husband had died in 1990, so 32 years before. Following the November 2020 election, she began to receive mail, specifically government agency mail, for her deceased husband. This individual was remarried, no longer used her first husband's name. Her deceased husband had never lived at the address, and no mail was previously received for him at her address. She signed an affidavit evidencing these facts. On that same day, we actually visited another individual on 973 Highway. According to this individual, mail was received in 2020 addressed to people that did not reside at his address. Specifically, a ballot request was received for the previous owner of the property that had moved 22 years before.
Good morning, folks. I want to thank you for this opportunity to present something. I'm going to take a little bit of a different twist. My affidavit that I signed personally in the presence of Karen DeSalvo is not resultant of the November 2020 election. However, it is allegedly and apparently reflective of problems in the May 2022 primary election. My name is Thomas Scheck. I'm a resident of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, specifically Pennsdale and Lycoming County. On April 17th of 2022, knowing that I would be out of town on business for the primary election in May, I applied through the U.S. Postal Service for an absentee ballot. I was advised by a representative of the Lycoming County Voter Services Office upon inquiry that an absentee ballot was mailed to me on April 25th. A week before my departure on business, I had realized that I had not received that absentee ballot, hence my call to voter services. I was advised by a representative of that agency to visit the office and have the missing ballot canceled out so that a new absentee ballot could be issued. On May 11th, I visited Voter Services Office for Lycoming County. According to the representatives of that office, many ballots had been returned to them as undeliverable. I personally observed a stack of returned envelopes that were at least 2 inches thick. I was then given the envelope that contained my absentee ballot that was returned by the United States Postal Service as undeliverable. To my amazement, and I did take the time to look at that envelope prior to opening that, the address on the envelope was correct. Voter Services had the correct information on the ballot to be forwarded from them by the U.S. Postal Service to my address. It included my name, my address, and the identified as indicated in paragraph 2 of my sworn affidavit. Lycoming County Commissioners were therefore notified through a text message or email of this anomaly. I make this declaration freely. I must say that I feel in this instance, and I can only speak for this instance in my experience, that Voter Services acted correctly, that the issue appears to be, at this juncture, with the United States Postal Service. Thank you.
Since we were here last time, 2 people reached out to me, so I just want to read their information quickly and then I'll finish through with what we have to say today. Thank you to all the volunteers that shared your stories. I had another individual since the time of the last hearing reach out to me. She lives on Flumen Road in Williamsport. She said prior to the November 2020 election, she received 2 or 3 mail-in ballots that she did not request. She said she threw them away. On election day in November of 2020, she showed up to vote at the old Lycoming Township Fire Hall, and she was told that she had to complete a provisional ballot. So she was upset about that because she was there to cast a vote in person. She remembers specifically being told that day that she was not the only one. She completed an affidavit, which is in your books. And then I had one other incident, somebody else who reached out to me since the time of the last hearing, who is from Montoursville. He has lived at his current address in Montoursville since June of 2007. Prior to the November 2020 election, a letter was received at his home from the Pennsylvania Department of State in Harrisburg. The letter was addressed to an individual that did not live there. The address was listed as his address, but it was with someone who did not live at that address. The letter said, quote, "Our records show you may not be registered to vote." Following receipt of the letter on October 7th, he called 1-877-VOTES-PA, the number that was identified on the Pennsylvania Department of State letter, and was advised by a representative of the office that groups purchase lists of voters and that they do not know why some of the names do not match the addresses. He was told that this name would be removed from the voter rolls under his address, but he wanted you to know that he has lived at his address for 15 years. This individual has never lived at this address within that time period, so he checked with several neighbors who lived next door since the 1980s. According to all of his neighbors that he spoke to, no one with that name ever owned that house, nor had they ever lived at that address. So that leads me to what happens next. So it appears that in our county, just with a small sampling of voters, we have people that voted from empty lots and a commercial business. We have a real nursing home problem. In 3 different nursing homes, we had people report that they did not vote in the November 2020 election, yet somehow absentee ballots were cast and these individuals' names. One woman admitted to the nursing home in May of 2020 was labeled not capable upon admission. According to an employee at the nursing home, she could not talk when she was admitted. Somehow she registered to vote in October of 2020, and a vote was cast in her name in the November 2020 election. She was a first-time voter in the November 2020 election. In Wisconsin, a similar thing happened. In Racine County, Wisconsin, a woman realized that a vote had been cast in her mother's name. Her mother was in a nursing home. She had dementia. She didn't recognize the children when the children would come to see her. She went to the sheriff's department and she asked for an investigation to be opened. That investigation resulted in Michael Gableman, a former Chief Justice from the Wisconsin State Court, being appointed to investigate what happened in the November 2020 election in the state of Wisconsin. Justice Michael Gableman has issued a report asking for decertification of the election in Wisconsin. This was not something that was unique to Racine County, Wisconsin. This happened in nursing homes across the state of Wisconsin. And I think that we need an investigation here in Lycoming County. Our nursing home residents are our most vulnerable residents. And if they were taken advantage of in the November 2020 election, if votes were cast in their names by individuals other than themselves, that needs to be investigated. So whose job is it? Oh, and I want to mention beyond the nursing homes, you heard all of these people come up and share their stories about people who said that they voted and no votes were cast in their names, according to certified state voting records. And the opposite as well. We had some people that said we didn't vote, but somehow votes were cast. So now, who has the duty to do something about this? Title 25 of the Election Code, Section 2641A, gives the County Board of Elections jurisdiction over this issue. And I've got some of the statutory language here, and I've bolded a few words, so I emphasized the County Board of Elections shall systematically and thoroughly inspect the conduct of the primaries and the elections. Shall, again, under the Elections Code in Pennsylvania, it is the election board in the counties that has the duty, shall, to investigate election frauds, irregularities, and violations of the act. And if you're concerned about the interplay between the role of the state, or if you're curious about the interplay between the role of the state or the powers of the state and the powers of the county, I have included within your books a recent court decision. This was just released on May 23rd, 2022 from Justice Leavitt, and I've got the citation listed there. You may recall in Fulton County, which coincidentally Seth Keschel put in green, in Fulton County, Pennsylvania, the commissioners wanted, after the November 2020 election, to get to the bottom of what happened, because the constituents in Fulton County, just as the constituents in Lycoming County, did not believe that the election was fair. So they wanted to audit their machines in the November 2020 election. And an edict was issued from the acting Secretary of State to all of the counties in Pennsylvania: do not touch those machines. No third party can touch those machines. If those machines are analyzed or reviewed, we will decertify your machines and no funding will be given to your county going forward. So effectively that shut everything down, right? So a lawsuit has been filed in Fulton County, and this is a quote from the conclusion of the lawsuit. This was an opinion just released, as I said, on May 23rd. The county boards of elections are not bureaus within the Department of State subject to management by the Secretary of the Commonwealth. They are separate and stand-alone government agencies. It is your power. You have the power. Our system was designed this way for a reason, a decentralized system of voting that gives the people a local voice over their elections. Before we get to what we want specifically, because we do have a list of what we are hoping to accomplish here, and we know that it will not happen today. But I do have to address one other issue, because this was a change that occurred with Act 77. Reconciliation of the number of voters with the number of ballots cast is required at every precinct polling place under Title 25, Section 3103 of the Election Code. Prior to certification, county election boards are required to compare the number of voters who participated in the election to the number of ballots cast in the election. So if there are more ballots than voters who participated in a precinct, the discrepancy must be investigated under Pennsylvania law. No votes are to be recorded from that precinct until the board completes the investigation. And we should never have the situation where we have more ballots than voters, because some ballots won't be right. Sometimes people vote for too many candidates. Sometimes people don't sign a mail-in ballot. So we should always have the situation where we have more ballots than we do voters, right? Prior to Act 77, absentee ballots were tabulated at the precincts on Election Day, which allowed for the reconciliation of the in-person ballots and absentee ballots to the number of voters within that precinct. In November of 2020, Mail ballot envelopes were not routed to the precincts, but instead remained at the county's central tabulation facility. Precinct poll watchers could only reconcile the number of voters that appeared in person on Election Day, which left a gap in the reconciliation process. Although the Secretary of State's office provided a lot of guidance on issues like no need to validate signatures, no guidance was issued on how to manage this new task, and many of the counties failed to properly reconcile. This issue was thoroughly researched by an organization called Verity Vote. The report, which was last edited on March 9, 2022, is in your folders. I actually asked the individual who was responsible for the drafting of this report and the compilation of this information to be present here today with us so that she could share her findings with you herself. She's actually in Virginia today, but she has indicated that if you would like her to sit down with anyone, she would be more than willing to walk you through her findings. But her report is very thorough, and I would encourage all of you to read it. It's in your books. The findings of Verity Vote revealed that across Pennsylvania, because of this lack of reconciliation of ballots to voters, we had 121,240 more ballots than voters in Pennsylvania. These findings were shared with Pennsylvania lawmakers, and their data provided the basis for two recent House bills, House Bill 1300 and House Bill 1800. House Bill 1300 recently passed the House and the Senate, but of course was vetoed by Governor Wolf. So what about Lycoming County? Lycoming County had 19 ballots that could not be associated with a voter. So in Lycoming County, we had a maximum number of voters from November 3rd to February 1st of 59,462. Total number of ballots cast in Lycoming County was 59,481. So we had 19 ballots more than voters. And as I said, we should never have the situation where there are more ballots than voters, because sometimes the ballots are just not right. Okay, so what we want. So that brings me to what we want. So we have 10 things that we want. The first thing that we want is no future use of voting machines or voting equipment. And it was like a gift from God, because I was putting together this slideshow presentation for the commissioners here today, and CISA dropped an explosive bombshell report. So who is CISA? They're the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. They're an arm of the Department of Homeland Security. The report that they issued literally days ago. So we've been told for 2 years that the voting machines were not connected to the internet, right? We were told that voting machines cannot be hacked. Well, according to CISA, an arm of the Department of Homeland Security, they just issued a warning that Dominion machines can be directly accessed by hackers who can escalate privileges and or install malicious code. Privileged actions can be performed by hackers, potentially affecting all other election equipment. That's a quote from the report. It's contained within your books. All right, at this time, if you could please play the third clip, New York Times.
Real-time data-driven precision. Let's create supply chains.
All cybersecurity experts who have given electronic voting machines any thought agree. These machines have got to go. To show you why, I'm running a mock election using the same dangerous and obsolete machines still in use today. Our election will find out whether Michigan students prefer their own university or our arch rival, Ohio State. After the chaos of the 2000 election, we were promised a modern and dependable way to vote. I'm here to tell you that the electronic voting machines Americans got to solve the problem of voting integrity, they turned out to be an awful idea. One vote for McCain. That's because people like me can hack them all too easily. I'm a computer scientist who has hacked a lot of electronic voting machines. I even turned one machine into a video game console. Imagine what the Russians and North Koreans can do. I've even gone to Congress to raise the alarm. Our highly computerized election infrastructure is vulnerable to sabotage and even to cyber attacks that could change votes. This is the same electronic voting machine used in Georgia, in parts of Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Mississippi, Tennessee, Texas, and even in swing states like Virginia, Florida, and Pennsylvania. Millions of Americans voted on paperless electronic voting machines in the 2016 election.
Who are you guys out for? 100% Michigan.
100% Michigan.
Obviously Michigan. Michigan. Michigan.
But here's a little secret between you and me. I've already hacked these worthless machines. Step 1. Buy a voting machine on eBay. Or, if you're the North Koreans, hack the manufacturer and steal their software code. Step 2. Write a virus. Step 3. Email your virus to every election official responsible for programming the voting machines with new ballots. Many of these officials are easy to find online. Step 4. Sip coffee and wait. Step 5. Hijack the ballot programming and let the election officials copy your invisible malicious code onto the voting machines. Step 6. Watch your code silently steal votes.
All right, here are the results from the electronic voting machines. Ohio State wins 131 to 108.
There's a good reason we computer scientists are paranoid. It's a golden age for hackers.
The computer virus that destroyed Iranian nuclear equipment.
This is one of the largest data breaches in history.
More than 1 billion of its accounts were hacked. What chance do the people running your local elections really have against Russia or North Korea?
Okay, everyone, I hacked the voting machines. I do have the real results because we also counted on paper. Michigan wins!
Michigan won in a landslide. And I can say this confidently because I have the real results from the safest and simplest solution, paper ballots.
We need to take a hard look at the equipment that actually records and reports votes. Even though the Senate Intelligence Committee is.
Sean Smith. Yeah. This is Judge Glenn Whitley in Tarrant County. You had put in an audience participation form. We're at that point on the agenda. You have 3 minutes to make any comments you wish to make.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. This point for me is that my background is as an active duty officer in the Air Force, was as a space operator. But I also spent considerable time doing operational tests of complex computer-based weapon systems. And then my last assignment was in the Pentagon, overseeing the operational testing of all space systems in the Department of Defense, except for satellite communications. And follow on to that, I spent about a year helping my former office under the Office of Secretary of Defense do what's called adversarial assessment. Through that process and through that experience and training, I have a pretty solid understanding of the cyber threat. And because of that, I understand in a way that most of the public doesn't understand, that there's no way we can ever trust a computer system built with components made overseas, particularly in China, or assembled in China, let alone both. And that's what we have in our voting system, unfortunately. I also think that the multitude of examples now where forensic examiners in Maricopa, in Mesa County, Arizona, in Georgia with the Haldeman Declaration about the Dominion ICX machine, all of that shows you, regardless of what voting machine you're using, that the regime of testing and certification that we have in place is useless. In fact, it's worse than useless because it assures us of something that is not true and of which that certification process cannot possibly verify. And for the people who said, well, the machines are certified, I would say, the Space Shuttle Columbia was also certified for flight. How'd that turn out? The Boeing 737 MAX was certified for passenger operations and then crashed, killing over 500 people in 2 separate accidents before they finally let experts take a look at it. And my point in saying that is not to try to scare people, but just to say that based on my experience, and I'm not a cyber professional, but I work with cyber pros, and I know the difference between somebody who knows cyber and somebody who doesn't. And if you don't know the difference, then you're in very dangerous territory when you try to make any conclusions or try to listen to someone who doesn't really know what they're talking about. Our voting systems, from my perspective, based on what I've seen and based on the expert examiner reports, cannot be trusted with our elections. And what they require in order for you to verify for yourself is that you become a cyber expert. Otherwise, you're forced to trust other people who say they're experts, people who have conflicts of interest, and people who've been trained essentially by the National Association of Secretaries of State, state election directors, and by the Election Systems Commission.
You need to wrap
one thing that's not true.
You need to wrap up your comments.
That's all I have to say. I appreciate the chance to talk to you. You know, I would just say we used to hand count at the precinct level, and it works just fine, and we can do it again, and we don't have to trust anybody to do that. We can see it for ourselves. And I highly recommend for all citizens in the country, if we want to be citizens and not subjects, that we take control of our elections back from the people who call themselves experts. Thank you very much.
The CISA report dealt specifically with Dominion machines, but it also said, just to do both sides of it, don't worry. The Dominion machines, which incidentally were used in 16 states in the November of 2020 election, don't worry, it didn't affect the November 2020 election, and it's just specific to the Dominion machines. But I want to point out to you that the researcher that is credited with the CISA report is the individual that you saw in the first video clip about Michigan State, Halderman. Professor Halderman was the one that was responsible. He has numerous times been quoted as saying, and there's information contained within your packets, it's not just the Dominion machines, it is all of the machines. All of the machines are vulnerable. All of the machines are capable of being hacked. And it's more than just the automated touch screen machines as well. So in your packets, you have information from the United States Election Assistance Commission. They issued a report just weeks ago on March 31st, 2022. So in Williamson County, Tennessee, individuals that were working the polls reported that the tabulators were changing the numbers of the ballots when they were scanned. According to poll workers, 7 of the 18 tabulators that were used during the election were reporting numbers that did not match the number of ballots being scanned. The conclusion by our government agency tasked with oversight, the United States Election Assistance Commission, in its report from March 31st, 2022, this is a quote, "The direct cause of the anomaly was inconclusive," end quote. Just days ago in DeKalb County, Georgia, at the end of election night, an individual running for county commissioner noticed that something was not right. Some of the precincts were reporting 0 votes, including her own precinct. Her supporters, including 2 other commissioners, began publicly raising questions about what happened. So what did they do? Fortunately, they had paper ballots that they could recount by hand. When they did, guess what they discovered? The person who had been given first place was actually third place. 3,000 was off by over 3,000 ballots, 3,000 votes. All of the experts agree on one thing. Every expert agrees on one thing. Hand-counted paper ballots are the most reliable way to conduct an election, and it's what we used to do here. So how do we get rid of the machines? Does the law allow for this to take place? Well, yes, it does. I have the statutory citations up here for you to review. Under the Election Code Title 25, Section 1102, you have the power. The County Election Board may, upon their own motion, submit to the qualified electors of the county at any general or municipal election this question: shall voting machines be used in Lycoming County? Now that's how we got them into Lycoming County. This process was followed. How do we get them out? If you scroll down to section 1104G of the election code, all you have to do is by your own motion place this issue on the November ballot: shall the use of voting machines be continued in Lycoming County? The law provides for a mechanism to discontinue the use of these machines, and you have the power to give the people of Lycoming County the choice as to whether to continue to use the machines. What's the next thing that we want? Number 2, we want a hand count. Oh, and the thing that I forgot to say, I was scrolling in my mind, there have been counties across the United States that have done this. In Nye County and in Esmeralda County, in Nevada, their commissioners voted, and they have removed the machines from those elections. It also happened in a county in Colorado, and that's what we would like to see done here.
Can you clarify, does that include the tabulators?
That includes all voter equipment, all voter equipment. Number 2, a hand count of all the paper ballots from the November 2020 election. Captain Seth Keschel believes that we have 4,000 fraudulent ballots in Lycoming County. We want a hand recount. You've heard from the individuals here that knocked on doors. This was just a small sampling of people. And you saw how many people said that they voted and no votes were cast in their names, or how many people said they didn't and a vote was cast. People voted from empty lots. People voted from commercial businesses. We want a hand count of all of the ballots from the November 2020 election, because we would like to see if, like in DeKalb County, Georgia, those numbers match. We want a hand count at every precinct at every election going forward, and obviously if you agree to have this issue placed on the ballot in November, we'll have to have the machines count them one more time. So I would respectfully request that in that event, we do a hand count at every precinct to make sure that that hand count matches the numbers. I've put the law on every one of these slides. I won't read the law for every slide, but I wanted to show you that what we are asking for, we are entitled to under Pennsylvania law. We want no consolidation of precincts. The County Board of Elections has the power to select polling places. And if we eliminate the machines, obviously we need small precincts, right? So that we have the ability to count our ballots in an efficient way. We actually have 81 precincts in Lycoming County, which is manageable with more volunteers. I hate to do this because I haven't checked in advance, but how many people in this room have volunteered to serve as poll watchers or poll workers and you've never been called? Raise the hands. Okay, there are lots and lots of people who would be willing to step in that haven't been given an opportunity to help with the elections, that would be willing to do that. So we need more precincts, not less. Your Director of Voter Services, Forrest Lehman, testified before the Senate State Government Committee on June 6, 2017 on the issue of election reform. This is a quote, it's contained within your books. If the election code were changed to permit counties to consolidate multiple smaller townships into a single voting center, or to permit counties to mail ballots to the voters in a small township, my county could save money. It's not about saving money, it's about the integrity of the vote. Number 5, we want regulations that require each precinct to post election results. And this is where I want to say thank you to our commissioners. Victor Welshons, who has served our country in the military, you heard him a couple of times. He knocked on doors, he canvassed. He went to the commissioners with this issue. We used to hang our precinct results at the polling places at the end of the election day. And you could go at the end in your precinct and look to see what the numbers were within your precinct. We didn't do that in November of 2020. And so Victor Welshons went to the commissioners and they agreed this should be done. And so this was included in the training. I saw it in the training video. I saw it in the PowerPoint slides for the training of the poll workers. But I sent volunteers, my 2 college-age children, to 44 precincts the day after the election. We didn't hit all 81. They hit 44. 14 were not posted in a way that they could be read by the constituents. So we would ask that there be a regulation. You have the ability to regulate here. We would like a regulation about the posting of the results. And I believe that probably the reason that the county stopped posting was because of this reconciliation issue that I discussed earlier. Act 77 forced central tabulation of the mail-in ballots. So they were no longer, the absentee ballots used to be counted at the precincts, and they were able to reconcile in-person and absentee ballots. They centralized, they took those absentee and mail-in ballots away from the precincts. So at the precinct level, they can reconcile for their in-person voting, but then there's a gap. And so we need a regulation for this. The commissioner should be provided with a list of every person that voted within each precinct by mail-in or absentee ballot. It should include the voter's name and the voter ID number to make sure that we don't have the situation where people are listed twice because they're listed as a Republican and a Democrat, so that commissioners can be compliant with the law, because the commissioners have now been given this duty to reconcile. We want an audit of all the ballot images from the November 2020 election. Again, as the board, you are required to investigate fraud, irregularity, and violations. We want to see if the ballot images match the paper ballots. Preservation of all November 2020 voting materials beyond all federal and state statutory guidelines. 22 months. The clock is ticking. The clock has been ticking since November of 2020. We want a preservation of the records beyond September of 2020. Here we are in June, and it's not for a lack of trying on our part. It's not for a lack of work or effort on our part to get this issue and this evidence before the commissioners. We want a regulation, not a verbal assurance. We want some sort of resolution that states that these voting materials, all of the voting materials, will be kept, preserved longer than federal and state statutory guidelines to ensure that this information can be properly investigated. Number 9 out of 10, I'm rolling to the end. Further audit efforts if a hand count and a review of the images confirms that we had fraudulent votes in Lycoming County. So we want an assurance that if we have a hand recount and those numbers don't match, that more will be done. And we need a cleanup of the voter rolls. Our voter rolls are an absolute mess. We should not have a situation where on the same street in Williamsport, we have 2 sets of people listed on the voter rolls twice. So when Mike House was up here, he told you about this, and I want to point out to you that that was on the same street. On the same street in Williamsport, at one home, a woman was on the voter rolls twice, listed once as a Republican and once as a Democrat with 2 different voter ID numbers. Down the street, on the same street in Williamsport, a person's listed on the voter rolls twice, once because his name is initialized and once because his name is written out. Our voter rolls are a mess because in Pennsylvania, lots of people were given access to our voter rolls in 2016. Pennsylvania is one of only 4 states that allowed third parties some sort of access to our voter rolls, and you can't make this stuff up. The Hillary Clinton campaign was given back-end access to the SURE system in 2016. In response to a right-to-know request, the list of entities that had some level of access to the SURE system was provided. It's in your books. I would challenge you to find one conservative or right-leaning group on that list. Many of the organizations are Soros-funded. Even Planned Parenthood had access to our voter rolls in the election. We need to clean them up here in Lycoming County. You have a duty to oversee the elections in our county, but you also have a duty to ensure that the voter rolls are clean and not corrupt. When you have an anomaly rate of 44%, when almost 1 of 2 houses that we visited in a small sampling of numbers, when those registration numbers don't match, we have a problem. And if you're not sure whether the statute provides you with the ability to do this, take it from the words of the Deputy Secretary for Elections and Commissions, Jonathan Marks, who testified on March 4th, 2021. This is a quote from him. The report is in your books. The County Board of Elections are responsible for ensuring the accuracy of the data that they enter on SURE. They correct any errors in the SURE system directly. And for my final remarks, I want to say thank you so much for listening to us today. We the people are represented by you. You are our elected voices. You were given the task of overseeing our elections. Your oath trumps the edicts of unelected bureaucrats. We need to restore public confidence in our elections. We have presented you with our petition. Given the signatures to date, total 1,175. So 1,175 of your constituents have spoken. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Lehman.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Today, an extraordinary request has been placed before the board to recount an election from 2 years ago. And as I think about what the board is being asked to do, I find myself reflecting on the 2 statewide recounts that we recently completed. Now, I don't enjoy statewide recounts, and my employees are tired of hearing me joke that we had so much fun on election day that we should be excited to do it over again. They hate that joke. But these state-ordered recounts have been an important opportunity to demonstrate that our voting equipment, which we've been using since November 2019, is accurate, and that the outcomes of our elections are correct. And I should note for the record, our equipment is not Dominion equipment. I know there were some words spoken about them. I don't know their equipment personally, but I've heard nothing from CISA, EAC, or anywhere else about clear ballot voting equipment. That's what we use. The machines featured in the video earlier are the old paperless machines that this county used to use until we transitioned to paper ballots. Those have already been replaced statewide. They're no longer used anywhere in Pennsylvania. That's why we're using paper. We just finished recounting all of the 25,000 ballots cast in the recent primary because we had two candidates for the Republican nomination for Senate who were only 1,000 votes apart. And the results of that recount confirm both the accuracy of our voting equipment and the correctness of the outcome. The vote totals for most of the candidates in our county stayed exactly the same. And for the remaining few candidates, they changed by 1 to 3 votes. So we're talking about shifts of thousandths of a percent. And across the Commonwealth, the other counties' results similarly shifted by single digits out of the 1.2 million ballots cast. We went through the same exercise after the November election last year when we had to recount the Commonwealth Court contest. That was 23,000 ballots. One candidate gained 3 votes, 2 candidates gained a vote each, and 1 candidate stayed exactly the same. Again, we're talking about shifts of thousandths of a percent because you have candidates' attorneys arguing about how to count a few ballots. Both recounts confirmed the accuracy of the voting equipment and the correctness of the outcome.
Horace, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
You just said that the attorneys argued about the accuracy of the ballot. So it wasn't a mistake in the tabulation, it was whether a mark was in a box or a square?
Right. Okay. So for those who believe that a recount of the 2020 election would reveal issues with the voting equipment or change the outcome, I believe that question has already been answered twice. We have 2 statewide recounts worth of evidence to prove that our voting equipment produces consistently accurate results. But the accuracy of the equipment is only part of the story. The other part is the human side. The hundreds of poll workers and county employees who work together to carry out the election. One of the most important tasks on which we cooperate is ballot reconciliation. It's the first topic I discuss in poll worker training. And if there are any poll workers in the audience, you would testify to that. And I think our poll workers do a great job at that. That's why I can confidently state to the public that there was no gap in our ballot reconciliation in November 2020, as today's presentation alleged, or in any other election on our voting equipment. Election day ballots are reconciled by our poll workers at the precinct. They have to account for every official ballot in their supplies at the end of the day. So they know they're starting with 500 ballots or 1,000 ballots, whatever that is, and they have to report back to us what happened to every single one of them. They have to inventory how many were voted, how many were unvoted, spoiled, issued as provisionals, and the county reviews those inventories after every election. And the mail ballots, meanwhile, they are reviewed centrally at the county. They used to be sent out to the polls, that's correct. They were opened by the poll workers out at the polls, but they were never counted at the polls. They were counted on single ballot scanners back at the county. That's the way it used to be before Act 77. Now they're reviewed centrally at the county. Each precinct's mail ballots are reviewed by a pair of county employees against a list of everyone in that precinct who applied to vote by mail to make sure that all the official return envelopes we received match up to those voters. And that's before any envelopes are opened. And that is done right in front of candidate and party observers who have the opportunity to ask questions. We had observers and attorneys representing both parties and multiple candidates watching that operation in 2020. I explained the steps to them, and those observers complimented the county employees and thanked them for their work after it was over. And I should note that it was over because we got through all those mail ballots that day. We didn't have to stop counting at the end of the night. We stopped because we were done. The only ballots we still had to count after the election were for military and overseas voters, and they have up to 7 days following the election to return their ballots. After the election, we also recounted all the ballots cast at 5 entire precincts on different equipment during the ballot reconciliation and the post-election audit, which confirmed the accuracy of the equipment again. Then we hand counted a random sampling of over 400 ballots as part of a statewide audit to confirm the outcome of the election was correct. Now, today's presentation also alleged there were 19 more ballots cast than voters who participated in the election. They're comparing the voter registration system to numbers out of our voting equipment. So they're looking at how many ballots went through the voting system out at the polls, and they're looking at how many people's vote histories and their voter registration records say they voted in 2020. And what that says to me is that out of nearly 60,000 voters who voted in the election, there were 19 circumstances in which a voter forgot to sign the poll book at the precinct, even after the poll workers asked him to, and the poll workers missed it too. Signing the poll book gives that voter credit in the voter registration system for participating in the election, because we scan their signature in the poll book after the election. That updates their vote history, shows that they participated. It's also possible they did sign the poll book and the county missed scanning their signature. Either way, you have 19 cases where a voter may have failed to sign the poll book out of 60,000 votes cast. That's 0.3%. So that means our poll workers were accurate down to 4 decimal places. It's a reminder that humans are imperfect when you process tens of thousands of in-person voters through 81 polling places, staffed by hundreds of poll workers over the course of 13 hours. But it also tells me that our reconciliation and post-election processes work. That's why I don't believe anything presented here today currently justifies the extraordinary request to recount a 2-year-old election. Allegations about individual voter records or voting experiences that have yet to be reviewed, or allegations that a candidate's vote total is higher or lower than what was expected, or allegations that it's somehow inappropriate if voters decided to split their tickets or not vote their entire ballots, that doesn't support an argument that the equipment doesn't count ballots correctly, or that the outcome of the election in this county was incorrect. And that's because voters aren't required to follow expectations. Every person in this room, I'm sure, hopes their candidates will win on election day, but voters can make choices that surprise or disappoint us. That is not a weakness or a failing of the democratic process. That is simply the way it works. In fact, voters violate expectations all the time. We've seen the surprise victories and defeats in local contests right here in our county. We have 70,000 registered voters in this county, and they do what they want. And I think they're proud of that. And in November 2020, the voters were not required to vote based on the party they registered with. We also had 6,000 third-party voters who voted in November 2020, and it would be even less responsible to make assumptions about that. Voters were not required to vote the entire ballot. They were not required to vote for candidates all of the same party. 2020 was the first election we had in this state without a straight party voting option, because Act 77 repealed that as well. We had 30,000 people who voted straight party in 2016 for whom it was not possible to do that. And they had to engage with their ballots in a new manual contest by contest fashion, and it can manifest itself in 30,000 different ways. No one was entitled to a specific outcome in the presidential election based on what voter registration totals or polling data might have suggested to them on the eve of the election. If the outcomes of elections were really a foregone conclusion based on voter registration totals, then Pennsylvania should have been electing Democratic governors, legislatures, and courts for decades, because they've enjoyed a registration advantage in this state for quite some time. or if the outcomes of elections were really a foregone conclusion based on pre-election polling, then Hillary Clinton should have won the state in 2016. Instead, Pennsylvania voted for a Republican for president for the first time since 1988. Democracy is clearly more complicated than that. No model or prediction or expectation can account for all the variables that thousands and millions of voters bring to the voting booth. The voters' unpredictability, it makes democracy both majestic and messy. It excites us, it surprises us, it can disappoint us, and sometimes it even humbles us. It's large, it contradicts itself, and it contains multitudes. You know, I have two large photos in my office, pictures that visitors tend to notice. They're big ones, they're black and white photographs. One of them is of Harry Truman. He's holding up the evening newspaper with the famously wrong headline. It says, "Dewey defeats Truman." And we know that's not how it turned out. That headline came about because the journalist who wrote it, Arthur Henning, he predicted the winner in 4 of the last 5 presidential elections since 1928. He believed all the conventional wisdom, all the polling data suggesting Dewey would win the presidency. So he went ahead, published that article in the afternoon before any of the polls had closed with that headline. And the article reported Truman and the Democrats, they'd lost everything because he thought he had the election and the voters all figured out based on the analysis, the punditry, the polls he'd seen going into the election. But he was wrong. The vote counting went into the night. It was a close election, but Truman won. There were 1% margins in a few states, but the Electoral College result was decisive, and Dewey conceded late the next morning. It's a cautionary tale, a famous historical example of an election prediction or expectation. It did not survive first contact with the voters. The surprise outcome reminded the newspapers, the pollsters, the pundits, they should expect the unexpected where the American electorate is concerned. And the other picture I have up on that wall is of Lyndon Johnson taking the oath of office aboard Air Force One about 2 hours after President Kennedy was assassinated. Jackie Kennedy, she's standing next to him. She's still wearing a coat with her husband's blood on it. A federal judge, a friend of Johnson's, he was brought to administer the oath of office before the plane left Dallas. All because we'd lost a president, and we also needed a president. The photograph is during the oath, so his hand's up in the air. And you can tell Jackie Kennedy's in shock. She's standing right next to him. But the look in her eyes, she's a million miles away. And visitors sometimes ask why that picture is in my office. It seems sobering. It's discordant to see that up on the wall. But the pairing of those pictures strikes a chord for me that I think is relevant to this proceeding. To me, those pictures complement each other. They capture two very different peaceful transitions of leadership in the history of our republic. One comic, one tragic. And when I look at them, I see these previous generations who obviously had their own tumultuous politics and differences of opinion. But they still shared a common understanding and trust that our democratic institutions and processes work. And that's what we need to recover as a community and as a nation. The ability to once again process elections and transitions of leadership in our republic with civility and humility and grace. Public service means a great deal to me. I'm an Eagle Scout, 14-year resident of this county, a husband, a father. I was a teacher in a previous life. And when I was in Boy Scouts, we were taught to leave every campsite looking better than when we found it. And I've tried to apply that rule to everything. I think you'd find that the other full-time staff in voter services and our hundreds of poll workers and the other county employees who help us with elections, they take their commitments just as seriously. So don't let the internet and social media demonize county election officials or cast the poll workers at your precinct as the enemy. We're here to help, and we're open to discussing these processes so they're better understood. But there are many rules we have to follow, and we can't make everyone happy all the time. My door is open to all the public, even though to some of you here today, I understand there is a lot of distance between our positions. But I believe there are some areas where constructive dialogue and education is possible. For instance, I welcome the information about potential issues with voter registration records that is specific and reviewable. I want our voter registration records to be accurate. I also welcome the information from people who were canvassed door to door about who in the household voted in 2020 or who didn't, or their experiences, in order to review those claims. I'm also prepared to forward potential violations of election laws to the district attorney when that is warranted. However, and in closing, I'll get there, I promise. I do not recommend that this board entertain a request to recount ballots from a previous election where there is no law or court order directing us to do so. The election code is very specific about when and how recount shall occur. There are qualifying conditions, there's a process that must be followed, and there's a time frame with deadlines for filing the request. If a county board of elections authorizes a recount that is not provided for by the election code, it opens the door for any person to request a recount of any recent election for any reason at any time. We have 2 elections each year. It is important to the public interest, it is critical to the public interest that requests to recount elections be filed at the appropriate time so that counties are able to complete one election and then move on to the next one. I also do not recommend that this board entertain a request to recount ballots from a previous election or hand count ballots cast in future elections where no evidence has been offered to support an argument that our voting equipment is inaccurate or that the outcome of the election in this county was incorrect. The county's full recounts of 2 recent elections prove that our voting equipment and procedures and our adherence to the election code and the diligent work of our poll workers and our county employees, it has produced and it will continue to produce consistently accurate election results. That's my recommendation. I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'd like to hear if anyone from the public would like to come up. If you please do come up, please state your name and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes if possible. We have a lot of people here. We'll make sure everybody is heard. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Verna Caruso, and I'm the inspector for the minority inspector for Ward 1 in Williamsport. I have worked in the polls for the last several years, and first of all, I think I would like to thank Forrest and all of his staff for the wonderful work that they do. I have never seen a system. I have never seen a system that was so incredibly organized and had so many double checks and triple checks to make sure that things were going smoothly and that there would be no way that ballots could be stolen or changed or in some way manipulated to make an outcome other than the way the people wanted to vote. I have always felt that voting was a sacred right in the United States, and I have voted my entire life. I'm 76, I couldn't vote till I was 21. But, you know, if our voting polls, our registration polls need to be cleaned up, I think that's one good thing. However, as far as any irregularities, any fraud, I cannot, as a poll worker, see how anything like that could be could be done in our county. We have so many checks and balances that it's ridiculous, I think. And when we had to take ballots that somebody made a mark in a place that they didn't mean to make a mark, and we had to spoil that ballot, put it in a separate envelope, account for that ballot, make sure that everything was put in its right place, save the seals that were taken off of various pieces of equipment and envelopes, to make sure that everything was accounted for when the election was over. That is a system that, it makes the ability to have any kind of election fraud just absolutely ridiculous. I am totally against this recount. I think if anything needs to be done, yes, we need to clean up the voter registration polls. But other than that, I think that we should, just because some people feel that, they didn't get as many votes as they wanted, and they don't like the results of an election, we can't afford to spend, the county's money on rehashing the same things over and over again. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Bob Pryor, Mifflin Township. Sitting here during this presentation, hearing all the testimony and so on, I didn't get the feeling that anybody was questioning our Lycoming County voter services. I think they do a great job, and I'm thankful to them for that. We're talking about the state. We're talking about the people, that the records are not correct in Harrisburg. We're not saying, that voter services is doing anything wrong. I think they do a great job, but we're talking about the people out there who are registered that shouldn't be registered, who are voting, things like that. Voting from an address that is non-existent. Harrisburg, they got to clean up their act. And I'll tell you one thing I think should happen is the whole state should have the whole slate of registry eliminated, cleaned up totally, wiped out. That would be the easiest way to do it, and then let people all re-register in a party they want to choose to be in. That's the easiest and quickest way to do it. It's going to take so much time to go through and clean up anything here. I understand that. That's a lot of work. But the best way to do it is just wipe the slates clean and let everybody re-register what party they want to be in. But we are not questioning Forrest's job and his duties. I think he does a good job. But it's not that we're accusing anything or anybody in this county, but like I say, it's the state and then how people are registered. We got to clean that up. And really, when Mr. Lehman was talking about previous elections way back, they didn't use voting machines then. Okay? So something's got to be wrong. We're really understand.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Sure.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Williams Noviello, and I've been a voter ever since I've been old enough to vote. And you commissioners have quite a job on your hands. I agree with everything that Karen has to say. I think there's a lot of people in the county that feel the same way I feel. May 17th election, I received a mail-in ballot that I never requested. I've always gone in person. I took part of that ballot with me and went to vote, and they told me I had to have the other kind of, because I had part of it, what's it called? Provisional vote. I said, no, I don't want a provisional vote. I want to vote in person. They said, you have to have everything. I said, great. I got all the papers I just threw in the trash can. I'll go get them. Brought them back down, and I voted. I want to know how I voted. So from what I learned here today is I can contact somebody and find out how I voted. Did I vote in person, provisional, or mail-in? and I will do that. So should everybody in the county have to go and check how they voted? No. No. We should be able to trust our voting. And from everything that I know, from different people that I've talked to who are computer experts, our machines are easily hacked. So I say we all need to go back to paper ballots. Paper ballots. And identification, verification when we go into the polls to vote, into our precinct. We have to show our identification to get into our children's elementary schools.
Yes.
We have to show our identifications to go on an airplane. We have to show our identifications for everything, but not to vote. This is our right as the American people to vote. We don't like somebody, we all go vote. Best friends vote differently. Okay, but this is our privilege. We are, and to clarify everything, we are not in a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. This is our responsibility. This is our responsibility to vote. This is our responsibility to keep an eye on the people that we vote for. Sometimes people go different ways, sometimes they don't. Life changes us all. We all go through our changes in life and our ups and downs, but I just agree with everything that has been said here. I'm not disagreeing with you, sir, who talked. You're doing your job. I don't know how you got your job. I don't know if you're a voted in person but we all have our jobs to do. But when it comes to our country, our county, and the power of the people in the constitutional republic lies in the smallest areas. It's not federal. It's not state. It's in the smallest. Our Constitution says it tells you what the federal government can do and what the states can do. And everything else is reserved for the people. We, the people of the United States.
Thank you.
I think there's two issues in front of you. Number one is what do you do going forward? Number two is what do you do in the past? Going forward, perhaps there are some things that ought to be done, and I suggest that what you do as opposed to rely upon a partisan group that has a particular agenda. If you're serious about looking into those things, then you appoint a nonpartisan volunteer group to explore these various issues in a short period of time. As far as going back, it's interesting, in 2021, after the election, all over the country, the lawyers representing Trump, not one of them in front of a court was able to prove or admitted there was voter fraud anywhere in the country, not one lawyer, not anywhere in the country. It's interesting that courts throughout the country have found in contempt lawyers for Trump and other individuals who have attacked voting machines and have fined them. My question to all of you is, where were you in 2016 when there were issues about the Russians being involved in hacking our, where were you? Where were you about then? None of you were there. You're not, you didn't say a word because you lost this election. And that's what it's about. You lost the election.
Stolen election.
They got 1,000 signatures out of 70,000 voters, 150,000 residents.
Can you speak
Now,
into the mic? We can't hear you, sir.
you got 1,000 signatures out of 70,000 voters and 150,000 residents. 1,000 signatures out of 70,000. That's 1 out of every 70. What percent is that? How much money is it going to cost to do this retabulation that's already been done statewide that Forrest talks about the recent elections that our machines have shown themselves to be valid? If they hadn't lost the election, if they had won the election, they wouldn't be here today. The gripe is we lost, therefore they cheated. Well, I lost in 2016. I thought they cheated too, but you know what? I'm an American. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a patriotic party person. I'm an American. And I love this country regardless. Now, whether I win or lose, and I vote for the system.
Talk to us, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
But you guys have an obligation to the 150,000 residents and the 70,000 other voters, and not 1,100. And to some degree, you're like a judge. You lay aside your partisan feelings and you decide what's best. And like I said, I think they had some good ideas going forward that ought to be examined. As far as the recount goes, that's sour grapes. There's no reality in it.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Andrew Cochran Lyon. I wasn't going to speak today. I found out about this over the weekend. The most compelling thing was presented to you today. Volunteer people going out there, canvassing. It's compelling. It's deep. So interesting that others can have an opinion we can't. I'm not sure why the director gets so emotional when he has a job that's not really emotional at all. Make your own judgments about that. He always has an opinion. Our opinion doesn't matter. Thank you for your efforts, because you've exposed something that needs to be looked at. You guys have a job in front of you that evidence is so compelling that something's got to be done. Lycoming County used to take the lead on things in this state. You have a chance to do it again. Why not Lycoming County? Why not? Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Bill Weigel. I'm a resident of Lycoming County. I have several properties we pay taxes on and so forth. The Seth Kessel thing, I don't know how many of you people seen his presentation in person, but he is an American-loving Christian man that gave his life for our service and our sacrifice. He has dedicated his entire life to this situation of checking his fraud ever since he's been retired. And the facts and the numbers and the things he showed us can't lie. I don't know how much fraud was in Lycoming County. I can't prove that exactly. I believe there's some, but there's many other counties, not counties, yeah, in Pennsylvania where there really was big fraud. And they proved that. If anybody's seen the movie 20,000 Mules, it's right there. I mean, you can't deny it. Nobody made that up and fabricated that movie. No. That tells the whole story. So I mean, Forrest said they did so many out of what, 80 some they did, I don't know, 13 or 15. Maybe there was no fraud in those few that they did. But what's wrong with one time doing them all just to see where we're at? And the other thing is the voter cleanup. It's horrible, dead people voting. I mean, you've heard it all today, all the different things, and that's just a few. There's many more. So, I mean, that has to stop. I mean, somebody's been voting dead for 20 years. Somebody's not doing their job. I mean, if I don't do my job, I don't have a business. So I just feel that you guys really should look into this and give this some deep consideration on a lot of these things. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Michael House, sorry, I had to run out to feed the meter. I personally canvassed, as I attested to earlier. I'm also a union president. My union generally leans itself Democrat. I'm a Republican. I'm open to discussion in my meetings with everybody. If you have a difference of opinion, come and talk to me. You can change my mind, I might change yours, we may agree to disagree. All we're asking here is to look at the books. If we're wrong, you're going to prove us wrong, and we'll walk away. What do we have once we're proven wrong? If we're right, it'll highlight that something needs to be done. There's a lot of people that are really concerned about this that have lost faith in our election process, and for an individual to look at efficiency over accuracy scares the crap out of me. I mean, if you're saying, oh, I can count the votes so quick, or I can hand count them, it takes longer, what do you guys want? Do you want efficiency or you want accuracy? It shouldn't be a political issue. I don't take this as a political issue. I just want the true results. I want to gain faith back in the election process again, because honestly, right now, me and my members that talk to me and my friends, we don't have faith in the process any longer. And that's scary. It's scaring the crap out of people. People are buying ammunition because they're afraid of what's going to happen, which it shouldn't be that way. We should feel safe in our communities, and like Lycoming County, we're a more rural community. I don't know, guys. What does it hurt to actually hand count them? It's going to take time. You'll get volunteers to help. The cost of it will way outweigh, or the benefit will way outweigh the cost of it. So please, take what we gave you and evaluate it. And if you haven't seen it, 2,000 Mules, watch it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Nope, got one more?
Hello, I'm Linda Ambrose, and I spoke earlier. I just want to say that I'm almost 70 in August. I'll be 70 in August, and I got up in January, all these days, and we just knocked on doors. It was snowing, the wind was blowing, and I'm thinking, you old woman, what are you doing running around the countryside, Montoursville, up 87, and the snow and the ice, and we're sliding. And I said, are you okay? Do you have control of the car? And we're knocking on doors, we're climbing over snowbanks. And I said, don't worry, I'll wear my country boots, my farmer boots, and I'll be okay. And I'm just dressed for it. And it was grueling, and we knocked. And I'm not getting anything out of it other than truth. I want the truth of Lycoming County. I want my vote to count. And I know it needs to be done. And paper ballots, we just need. Karen DeSalvo did all this work. Jeff Stroman, they did so much work. We were just the feet. We just knocked on doors. We had the cold hands. We had the snowy. I had ice in my hair. And I'm like 70, and my sister's saying, why are you doing this? I said, because it's the truth, and I need to do it. I need to do it, and I'll do it again. I would never not do it. And we need truth out there. We need our elections to count. And I know there's so many anomalies. And thank you, Karen, and thank you, Jeff. And thank you for sending us forward to do what we needed to do in our county. We need it to be strong. We need it to be correct. We need truth. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carol Johnson, and as this man back here, I wasn't intending to talk today, but I find myself compelled to. A little background just to tell you my mindset. I'm from a critical care nurse perspective, bringing at the bedside, from the bedside, if I don't see something, if I don't watch that patient and watch the details of what they're doing, not just suddenly his blood pressure is up, but watching it climb. I can compare it to this request today and say that lots of times in the details you will find a lot. Whether you find a lot of fraud or anything in this or any other county, to me it's worth the look. And we spend a lot of money on other things that aren't as important, I don't think, as this. And we can find the funds to do this, we find the volunteers. But in the nation, there's so many voters that feel this way, so it's local too, of course. There was a group started because of the election fraud. That was their whole purpose. They're so upset about it. So I don't personally see anything wrong with it, financially or anyways. There was a lot of work put into this. People did it for a reason. And even in Pennsylvania, to me, Lycoming County would set themselves up as, look, we looked at it. We looked, we didn't know, we did it. Maybe you all should do it, especially over in the East and the West. Thank you.
Thank you.
afternoon. My name is Orrin Thomas, and I didn't get to read the page there because I wasn't following the numbers there. But a couple of different things I wanted to say. My wife just a few weeks ago went to get her ears pierced, and they wanted identification. She had to have identification. It's true. And I think, I don't know where our world's going, but I'm 73 years old, so I'm old, but I have watched our country decline, and we're at the precipice, I think, of something even more nefarious and terrible that's going to happen to our country if we don't take action. And so I believe that these voting machines, it's wrong. We used to vote on paper ballots and have the ability to count on the same day. And I know this is some things that perhaps isn't even about what we're talking about, doing the recount and so forth. But these Dominion machines and the other ones, we really need to get back to paper ballots and vote on the same day, have actual identification when you vote, because why should anyone just be allowed, if you went to a foreign country and said, I'm here to vote, where would you get? And yet, that's what we're doing. We're just allowing anyone to vote without any of the, you don't even have to be a citizen, and you go up and say, I'm going to vote. But I did go out canvassing as well. We started right after Christmas, the day after Christmas, I believe. And anyhow, I've been a resident of of Lycoming County for a number of years now. I used to think that the grass was greener somewhere else, and so my wife and I spent time in Tennessee and Georgia, and we found out that actually the grass was greener right here. Williamsport is a beautiful city. We love the city of Lycoming County, and I'm proud to be a resident of it. And but anyhow, I'm registered to vote in Lycoming County, and I visited actually with my daughter Karen DeSalvo and a home in Cogan Station in the canvassing process. And according to voting information, 4 individuals were registered to vote from the above referenced address that you have on file. In November 2020, when attempting to confirm the information on January 3rd, I spoke to the person who answered the door, who advised that 2 people who were registered to vote from the above referenced address in November 2020 moved at least 7 years ago, and 1 had died more than 2 years ago. You're saying that nothing's wrong for us, but there is something wrong. And we really need to address something. Where do we start? I would love to see the voting machines. I would love to see that we voted with paper ballots and have record of it and be able to actually check signatures and so forth. But something's amiss in this country, and if we don't fix it, and here we are, the sea of people here in this small room actually, but the room is filled with standing room only. These are people that at least care, and we're watching this being taken away. I said this one time at a school board meeting, but when I went to school, I went to 13 different schools or 14 different schools in 12 years. But you know, when we did at least on Mondays in all the schools, we did the Lord's Prayer, we said the Pledge of Allegiance, they even read the Bible. We don't do anything anymore unless you're going to private schools and so forth. But what in the world is going on in this country? It's really bad. I'd like to be a part of somebody that cares, rather than sitting back and say there's nothing wrong with it. There's something wrong, and we all know it.
Anyone else? I'll make it quick.
I say just one more thing. This was not meant to be political. This group is looking out for every registered voter's interest, no matter what party you're in.
That's right.
So it goes both ways. We're not here making it political. I'm sure that was made very clear. So I just wanted to bring that point up.
Thank you.
This will be brief. I remind you all, because there were some courts in the country that didn't want to look at the evidence, that was a problem. And that just shows skewing of facts. But yes, don't take this personal. People that work for the polls, I was a poll watcher. They think they work hard, they're honest people. We just want to maintain integrity and show the rest of the state and the country this county isn't going to be taken over. And in the Declaration of Independence, we have that little clause, by the consent of the governed. It's a governed that allows things, and the governed insists to do things the way it's supposed to be done in accordance with our Constitution, with the founding documents of the preamble and the Bible, because they're all founding documents of this country, and if they're not in line with those documents, it's not constitutional. And if it's not constitutional, it's not law. Act 77 is not law, and we have the power of this county to renege all that and to go by the consent of the governed by this county. Thank you.
Okay. Gentlemen, you have any statements you want to make?
I do, just a couple. First of all, the words committed, tenacious, pitbull, unwavering goes for a number of people sitting in this room, as well as Forrest and our teams and our, all of our volunteers. They are committed to having a good, solid, and an election that has integrity. I believe that from the bottom of my heart. I don't believe in some of the information that was given to us today, but that's yet to be seen. I think that the media is divided, the national media has divided this country more than the political parties have. And we have to be careful of that. What you have done is patriotism. That's what you've done. You've worked. You've said, I want to show the commissioners, or at least give them evidence of something that we're concerned about. And yes, I applaud you for that. And we will be looking at the affidavits, and we will be looking at your 10 requests. Now, I'll speak to you not as a commissioner, an election board, as a voter, as a citizen. That when thousands of postal workers, from carriers, sorters, mechanics, janitors, have access to our votes, something is not right. Shouldn't be. And we will continue to see mail-in votes become more and more popular from both sides. It's not just the Democrats or the Republicans. We have elderly that are in homes, or they're in their own homes, and it's snowing. They don't go out. They should have the right to vote. But that's part of the act, and that's concerning. We have to deal with that as a society. Fulton County was brought up, and they were decertified. I truly believe, and so did many of our colleagues, believe that this had a direct effect on the counties not auditing the vote in 2020 election. Could you call it intimidation? Possibly. But that's just my opinion. Central facilities were mentioned about voting or consideration or consolidation, of which your group does not want. But as we have less and less volunteers, and we do, certain things will have to be done so that people have the opportunity to vote. And whether it's central facilities in the consolidations of the precincts, as long as it's there, that we can analyze it to a degree. We live in a rural county. Our population, our voters are, when they voted the most, I think it was 69,000, I'm not sure if it was 70.
In 2020?
Yes.
It was almost 60,000.
60, okay. We live in a rural county. We don't understand that in a metropolitan city, they're out there waiting to vote for hours and hours and hours. And some may not vote because I can't wait any longer. So You know, there's a lot of things that we have to consider, not just about rural America. You know, we want everyone to vote as much as we can. That's what a true democracy or republic does. Forrest came to us earlier before we even got a request that we will be preserving the 2020 ballots beyond our 2-year deadline. And then expectations of an election was brought up in, you know, many conversations. So I went back to the 2012 elections, where it was a presidential election. I wanted to see if there were differences, anomalies. And yes, I found them. There were more people that thought our state senators were more important than the presidents of the United States. I had a hard time believing that. But more senators got votes than the president. And a matter of fact, the AG got a lot less votes, and so did some of the judges, by 3,000. So it shows you that by just looking at the 2012 vote, that there are people out there that won't vote for a president, that won't vote for the AG, that won't vote for a senator, who'll vote for local, or she. So there are many inconsistencies within how a person votes. And I'll go right back to 2012, and Jeff, you'll probably know this better than most of us here in this room, that probably back at that time, even Williamsport had an edge on the Republican voters. But yet, Commissioner Marabito at that time was running for state rep and beat the Republican by 3,900 votes. Expectations, well, I didn't expect that. But it happened. So, just to put that to rest, you can't know what the voter is going to vote. So, those are the issues that, and some of the issues that you bring forward to us are important, and we have to look at. And we want to respect everyone, not only here, but in our departments. And if the evidence shows we should be doing something, you know, we'll have to take action. I appreciate the work that you've done. There's a lot to review. And then we'll put our team together and we'll move on from there.
Commissioner?
When that slide was up there and the difference was 12 voters, 12 votes. You know what I'm talking about? The slide that you had up there that said there was a difference of 12 voters? 19. Okay, 19 voters. We've never had 100% voters. 70,000 voters out of 150,000 people, 70,000 people, 70,000 are voters. We've never had 70,000. Just said it, the 60,000 was, did you say 2012? There were 60, or 2016, there were 60,000. So that takes that 19 votes to 1,019 votes. Differences.
So yeah, I want to thank everyone for the work that you've done, regardless of whatever opinion one has on it. You know, when a 70-year-old woman is going out canvassing in January, it shows a commitment to trying to do something for your community. And as anyone who's knocked on doors knows, that is not a easy thing to do, and it's not a great thing to be doing in January. So I also want to thank all of you for the effort. You know, as one of the individuals stated, we sit as a deliberative body, and so I think it would be not responsible for us right now to tell you this yes or no, because quite frankly, there's a lot of information that's been presented, as evidenced by the size of this book, and there's work that needs to be done. And there was a suggestion that another, suggestion was a nonpartisan group, but it may be helpful to have some input from some group on examining it. we certainly will discuss that. You know, I said that I'm respectful of all the volunteers here. I'm also really respectful of our staff at Voter Services. And I know sometimes when you deal with people who work in government and they don't always seem to be doing what you'd like, that you may get upset. But truth be told, and I'll say specifically in Forrest Lehman, Forrest Lehman is incredibly well respected for his integrity throughout the state of Pennsylvania. And I'm not saying that any of you are questioning it, but I want you to understand that as commissioners, if we didn't believe that the person running that office was of the highest integrity, we would not keep them there. Because the integrity and the commitment that he shows to the position helps us to give confidence to the election outcomes. So I think that that's important for people. We can all disagree with each other, but at the end of the day, I think we have to be able to respect that all of us are trying in our way to do what we believe is right. Just as we respect what you all are doing, we need to be able to respect the work that he and his staff have done for many, many years, some of them. And not under the greatest conditions. Short staffing and difficulties that make the job difficult. Many of you may not know this, but across the state of Pennsylvania, directors of elections have resigned. They've resigned because, frankly, at the end of the day, they say to themselves, for what I'm being paid and the stress of the work that I'm being put under, I can do something else. That doesn't mean that one doesn't have a responsibility to do their best, but I just think that we should always try to recognize, you know, the expectations of an election that the commissioner spoke about. One of the things that struck me about this election, I don't know if it was Commissioner Musser or someone else pointed it out to me, is that Representative Whelan, Representative Ham, and Senator Yaw all received more votes than the president, who was on the Republican ticket, President Trump. And so that said to me that there were people there who were voting maybe for a person from their party. They could have been Democrats who voted for Whelan, Ham, and Yaw. But clearly, for whatever reason, the person at the top of the ticket did not get the same level of support that down ticket people got. So that's something that has to be examined. As I said, there's a lot to go through, and we have to be mindful of the fact that if we do something with one request, we cannot simply in the future say we're not going to do that with another group. We set precedents when we take actions, and we set precedents that sometimes can come back to haunt us. So whatever we decide, we will do it in good faith in terms of examining what you have done. We will do it with respect for all the effort that you put in, and we'll do it in a way that we try to get to the best decision. Thank you.
Thank you. We all want the truth. Everybody wants the truth out of this. And everybody wants to make sure that our election has the utmost integrity. And I want to thank the parties that brought us this information to us today. There's a lot here, a lot that we have to go through. Some of it has to be investigated immediately, and it will be. It will be. We swear, we take an oath. As commissioners, we take an oath when we do with the Board of Elections. When we're sworn in to uphold the Constitution. And when you see something that needs to be looked into, we will look into it. People have lost faith in the system, and when we take inaction to anything, it shows that things need to be looked into. Not generalizations, but specific things here. You know, people who sign affidavits under penalty of perjury. Those things have to be looked into immediately. I am not a fan of Act 77. I made that known. as a commissioner, never have been. We have an election day, we don't have an election week. It's pretty sad when I go into Walmart on Sunday and have to give my photo ID for medication, for allergy medication, because they think I'm an addict, but they don't ask for it when I vote.
Amen.
You have to show your photo ID to get into the Republican and the Democratic convention to get through the doors. But you don't have to show your ID to vote. So there are things that need to be cleaned up. The voter rolls, there's things that need to be cleaned up. But there's a lot of good ideas here that have been presented to us. We'll take a look at them, look into them. And I look back at the 2020 or 2000 election. You know, we saw what happened in Florida. The Chads, they were the laughing stock of the nation. And Pennsylvania's in that situation right now. Things need to be looked at, and both parties need to come together in Harrisburg and get it right. And get the things that need to be cleaned up, taken care of. They've been identified. They've had hearings on it. And there's things that they can do down there to make the county's jobs easier. Because ultimately it comes back on the counties. The cost, everything is pushed back on the county. You know, the voting machines, everything comes down to back to the counties. So we will look into everything that's been presented to us. I want to thank the voters. They work hard. I want to thank the poll workers. They work incredibly hard. The training they go through, and it's a long, long day for them. Some of them have to drive for an hour and a half to bring the election results in. And you know, I want to thank them for their dedication, service, and they get paid next to nothing, really, when you think about it. It's almost as bad as jury duty. And but it's a service they take great pride in. They want to make sure that things are done right, and they do a good job. You know, there's a lot of stuff that goes on around us, and we don't have ballot boxes or drop-off boxes in Lycoming County. We saw that happen in other cities, and that's where you have a lot of ways that corruption can manifest very quickly. So we will look into everything. We appreciate everybody's time. We've gone way over. And yeah, we have some. I just want to recognize some young folks who are with us today. They're getting the first class on civics and government and election, and we're very respectful for being here. I want to thank you all for being here as you learn the process. But we have to come together as a county and a community. It's okay to have disagreements as long as everybody's heard. You know, you're not going to get your way all the time, obviously. That's not the way things work. But we can respect each other. And we have to live with each other. We're all Americans at the end of the day. And we have enough enemies out there fighting us. And when we have division amongst us, our enemies are laughing at us. Because that's exactly what they want. They want us to be divided amongst us. So thank you for your time. We're definitely going to be looking into this. We'll be in touch with you folks in the near future when we get a handle on everything. Thank you.
Karen, can you get us the presentation, send us the slides?
It's in there.
Oh, it's in here on a thumb drive?
Thumb drive.
Oh, gotcha. Thank you.
Very, very thorough.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.